Hello, everyone, and welcome to this bonus episode of NASS. If you've been following us, you know that we did an episode, I will say earlier last year, right? Not that long ago.
Not that long ago, no.
Yeah, on Shudder's series called Horror's Greatest, and we did the season one episode, so make sure you go and check that out. We decided season two coming out, why don't we do it again? But this time we're going to cover it episode by episode because there's just too much to cover. This is a great series for anyone that's a horror fan. They get into a lot of details, cover a lot of movies. So we feel we need to do right by it and kind of take it episode by episode. So today, I am your host for this episode, Jose.
I am your other guy, George.
I am the token female, Marie.
Yeah. And well, it feels weird when we're using like our actual names.
I know.
Right?
Who
But
am I?
Yeah.
Who
yeah,
I
am
that's
I?
I hesitated because I remember the name I was gonna use. I was like, that's not
yeah.
the name you're using. Use your real
I
name,
know.
George. Your real name.
Whatever that is.
I'm Jose. Uh, but in this episode, we are going to be covering episode one of the series, and the title of episode one was Animal Attacks, covering movies that, like the title explains, dealt with animal attacks. And we know we have some good ones over the decades. With that being said, let's kind of get right into it. You know, you know what? I was going to say this question for the end, but let's ask it right off the bat here. All right. What was you guys' overall thoughts on this episode? Let's get right into it. George?
I was okay with it. I think I was decently pleased. Uh I don't think I was hit as hard with like the emotional horror feels like I was in the first season per se, because this almost felt like an attachment to the giant monster episode that they had. This could have been an addendum to that situation. So it didn't feel, I guess, maybe as grand as the others, but it still like hit some nostalgia notes of like my childhood and some of the old classic animal films that I used to watch. So I was pleased.
What about you, Marie? What was your overall thoughts on this episode?
When I think about horror, the first place my mind, the last place my mind goes to actually is monster stuff or animal stuff. I don't, especially like animals. I don't consider that horror in my mind. More like thriller, I guess. Um, I don't. It doesn't. Well, I'll save some stuff for later, but it doesn't really scare me when I'm looking for a horror movie. Horror's best. I don't put on like an animal movie. That's not what I put on. But again, I can't say anything till later questions, so that's all I'm gonna say. But I still enjoyed it. I still enjoyed it. It still brought up some memories too, and like it brought up movies that I'm like I haven't seen that in a while. I need to rewatch that. So it made me want to rewatch movies that I watched when I was younger that I probably didn't appreciate back then, where I was like, okay. So I mean, it did its job. Like it left a mark, but I like more of a like scary horror, something different than animals. I think it should have been like a middle. They should have opened up with a different episode, but I still
Yeah.
enjoyed it, obviously.
So, like the morning after a good taco night, it left a mark. Uh, uh,
I wouldn't
oh,
know, Jose.
We don't have tacos in Canada.
No.
Uh, overall, I felt for it to be the first episode of the season, I feel they fit in a lot. They covered a lot of movies. They even included multiple like top five like lists throughout it, covering
Mm.
different things because they had like top five best pets like in these horror
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
movies
a
because
standout. That
yeah,
Yeah.
because not
That
all
was
the
good. That was
animals are
cute.
bad in these movies. So I felt like they jam-packed it well enough. I felt it had good pacing, and for that specific topic, I feel they covered it very well. And they had a lot of things that I have seen, a lot of things that I remember, a lot of things that I forgot that I had seen, mixed in with things that I've never even heard of. So like it had a really good balance of everything for me. So I think it's a good way to start the series. And again, it's one of those subgenres, and I agree with what you guys are saying that it's not the first one that comes to mind when I think horror. It's probably not the second or the third. But some of these, yeah, they definitely fall under that category. Getting into the topic itself, because besides the episode, I just want to talk about the topic. My first question for you guys is, for you personally, not what the industry or stuff, for you personally, like, what animal or animals do you think works best for these type of horror movies?
I really do think like any type of sea creature, it doesn't even have to be a shark, anything below the surface and in the water. Because when you're in water, I have a fear of drowning in general. So it's just like it already freaks me out. But when you're in water, you're so vulnerable as it is. So you're like nearly naked. You're wearing like a bathing suit or whatever. So that's just vulnerable in itself. There's no leverage for you to get up onto something normally. Like say it was like in like the middle of a lake or whatever. There's nothing you can like really quickly get to. You're kind of stuck there. There's no coverage for you to hide. You can't see it coming from beneath. So that it freaks me out so much. Even like if you're in a lake or something swimming and a little bit like seaweed or whatever brushes against you, like you don't know what the hell it is. You're like, hopefully it's seaweed. But in the back of your mind, you're like, that could be anything you don't even know. And there's things in the water that haven't even been discovered. You don't know what's down there. Like it's freaky. It's like the unknown. And if something drags you down to the depths, sometimes you're never going to be found. Not only are you going to get like eaten or perish in that way, but you're also going to drown. Like it's just this big. That scares me the most. It's like the unknown, so that's kind of the most almost like borderlining paranormal to me. It's like you don't really know what it is or what could be getting you from. So I think underwater sea creature, shark, whatever, kraken stuff is
I could
good.
definitely, what is it, like 70% or whatever? It's a high percentage of the ocean that hasn't even explored. They have no
Yeah.
idea what's down there because it's like too dark.
Exactly.
But yeah,
Oh,
I've gotten that before. Like I've been in the beach and something brushes it against your foot and you turn into a can-can dancer all of a sudden, just like kicking up in the air. What about you, George? What type of animal or animals do you think work best for you for these type of movies?
Well, just to tack on, I would say you could be in a pond or like a creek, and that same feeling will still happen. There's 2 feet of water, and you're still equally as terrified if you were in the endless depths of the ocean. Nothing changes. If you
it's true.
This happened in
Yep.
my tub, and then it turns out it's my other foot.
It's my rubber ducky. It's my rubber. But
Hell was that?
I guess like Marie nailed exactly everything I felt. Like I put like crocodile sharks on stuff. Like for me, it's a visual design thing. Like yes, the water and everything of the unknown is definitely a heavy "what the hell am I gonna do" thing. But as a design aspect, I think animals that already look monstrous work great. You know, a crocodile looks like a monster already. But even like when you go deeper into the ocean, and like the further deeper you go, these fish, their teeth get really thin and dangly, and like their eyes are just blank and dead. Like these are things that look like they can't be from Earth. They have to be aliens or something, you know. So I feel like it's like on a design aspect, that alone really helps and works. So you think of like a character in comic books like Venom, he's kind of designed off of creatures like that with how his teeth are, you know. So like these are made to be monsters. It's already given to you. You don't have to even think too much about it. I mean, that's what I
Mhm.
usually would gravitate towards if I was going to make like my own animal monster movie. It's just anything related to that. And it doesn't have to be underwater. Just take like that fish with the light bulb on his head, you
Oh
know.
my God,
If
anglerfish.
that thing
Oh,
walked
that's a
on land,
cutie.
you wouldn't mess with that thing.
Look
I
at this,
know.
the deeper you get into the oceon, the more Guillermo del Toro it gets.
Right? Exactly.
Oh,
Just eyes on hands, man.
could be anything. Yeah.
No, I can see that. For me personally, I probably wouldn't choose that because like the water itself will kill me before the creatures do, since
Yeah,
I
no
can't
swimming.
swim. So the creatures
Yeah.
aren't a danger for
Same.
me. I'm gone already. What came to mind to me it was actually like wolves. And then like the movie The Gray is one of the first
Oh
ones
yeah.
that pop in my head. What I like about it is like, okay, yes, an individual wolf probably not as intimidating in general, but it's for a movie itself, I think that cat and mouse game, the back and forth, like kind of like the chess match you have between the person and the wolf. Because the wolf, they're not just gonna come out and attack you right away. They're gonna toy with you. They're gonna kind of test to see like, are you a threat to the so there's always that whole thing where there's the stalking aspect of it. And I think that makes for a really good horror thriller with the tension that builds up. It's not just I stepped in, they're going to attack. There's again that stalking aspect of it. So that's the first thing that popped in my head was wolves. I mean, I still would love to own some wolves and stuff like that, but
I'd say to add to your thing, there's even that sense of like with wolves, that pack mentality, they're learning as they go
Oh
along.
yeah.
So it's like when you think you're outsmarting them, they're learning to outsmart you along the way. That's pretty freaking
Hmm.
frightening.
Yeah.
exactly. And you don't know when they're gonna come, when they're gonna attack, when they're just posing. So that's why that popped in my head. But I could definitely see like the sea creatures itself being into it. So I just stay out of the water.
Mhm. Same,
Oh,
because I'm so scared of what's down there.
well, they covered a ton of animals. There was some that popped in the show where I was like, I didn't even know they did one about that animal. Was there like any animal that you've thought of that you don't think they've made a movie of, but you should?
So oddly enough, despite me saying that I think monstrous creatures should be in these things, my mind automatically went to cute animals. So the first thing I thought of was like a sea otter, but I was like, man, how are they gonna kill you? So then I thought of a hedgehog. And it's like, ooh, hedgehogs would be freaking dope in a freaking horror movie. Because they're really cute. But
Yeah,
imagine if like one had like that crocodile movie where like it got exposed to toxic, chemicals. So now a toxic chemical like hedgehog, like maybe the porcupines become more like metallic or some shit, or they're like poison darts, and there's like a whole horde of them, just a massive horde of hedgehogs just shooting out quills at everybody, and you see people with like quills in their faces, just blood everywhere. Yeah, I got the more I thought about it, I was like, oh, this would be freaking awesome as hell.
you get a robotic hedgehog.
Yeah. Maybe they put like a Jason X on it and it just goes through like this freaking hybrid metal thing and just doesn't die.
It just likes flesh instead of chili dogs.
Yeah.
That's a whole franchise. You can make a whole franchise out of that.
Yeah.
Hedgehogs go to hell,
Maybe if I
all
can
that
live for
stuff.
another like 100 years, I wait for like Sonic the Hedgehog to go on public domain.
Mhm.
Yeah. What about you, Marie? Was there like some animal that you don't think they've made one of? You're like, okay, I think this can work.
I think there has to be like a horror movie. It could be jokey or it could be not because listen, geese are evil. And you guys have heard me talk about geese before. And I don't know what, because when I was in Nashville, the geese were different. They were like white, all white, or they're something or whatever. But Canadian geese are the ones with like the black neck and the black head, white. And like, let me tell you, they don't give an F about you or anybody else. They can, I saw one at the park attack a pug dog that was on a leash. It was so sad. The owner had like intervene, and these beasts were just like attacking. They can break your arms with like the flap of their wings. That's how like the force of they hiss. They hiss. This bird hisses. They are snakes. They are snakes with wings. They're winged serpent. No, yes, winged serpents. They're so evil. They don't get out of the way. You go to this like the park and there's their poop everywhere. They're flying overhead in like friggin' geometric shapes. I'm like, they're from hell. They're from hell. They're evil. A Canadian goose movie. There's got to be one because those things are from Satan.
American geese are not that much better from what I've seen. They
Yeah.
Do
did
they
just
hiss
Yeah.
at you? Do they
um
hiss?
no, they haven't hissed at me, and I don't know if they hiss, but
A lot of
you know,
honking for sure though. I've seen them like go
yeah,
in a honk frenzy.
yeah,
Yeah.
and a lot of
No.
testing their boundaries, a lot of like, what's up, what's up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they don't care. But he's saying, but they'll you go too close and they'll hiss and their tongue sticks out while they hiss, and it is like this. Like I hate them. So I would love to see a horror movie about that because they're terrifying in real life.
The fact that there hasn't been one, I feel like it's right there.
Yeah.
That's right
Oh,
there. You could
just
do a
just just
sequel to Birds, and then they get backup. It's the geese
The
to get
enforcers.
yeah the enforcers.
you guys, I'm sure I've sent videos in the group chat. There's like in the fall time, there's thousands of them at the park when I go walk around. There's thousands of them. Thousands. You can't take a step without goose poop being there. It's ridiculous.
I'm
Easily, if you guys want to make a goose movie, come to Winnipeg. Easy, easy.
I got a question, Marie. Is this why Canadians are like abundantly like kind and nice to everybody because you're making up for like the terror that are the geese of Canada?
Yeah, the amount, well, I'm sure there's people who apologize to geese and treat them nicely, but I do not. I look at them and I'll just be like, get the fuck away from me. Like I'm so mean to geese, but I'm scared. So I'll like kind of like be like, fuck you, and I'll walk away. But like,
SWAT gear, back the fuck up.
see,
It's like
yeah.
with the bears, it's like it's probably gonna kill you, but they tell you like make yourself big, make some noise, and like act like you're tough. For me, I was like, I'm thinking, okay, what animal have I not seen? And then I thought of an animal that would be very unexpected that'll turn on humanity. An animal that has been used as a joke for far too long, and that said they've had enough. And that is cows. Like everyone thinks cows playful, nice. They give us chocolate milk, like everything's all good.
Give us chocolate milk.
The milk.
Yeah, but
Uh,
that's it. They've had enough. They tried their campaign to get us to eat chicken. That didn't work because we're still having cow. We're still using them as a joke. We're tossing them around in tornadoes and everything, and they turn on us. And no one's gonna expect it because they're cows. People are just gonna be like, "Oh, little cow," and then how they would actually take out people, I don't know. I'm still working out those logistics,
Mm.
but like, I feel at some point the cows need to turn like mean.
I thought of something just now as you're saying it. You know how there's like all the theories about cow mutilations and aliens doing cow mutilations and stuff, like UFOs coming down and like
Hmm.
yeah.
cows mysteriously with like their eye missing and a laser cut and everything. You've seen all this stuff. Well, what if the aliens are working on this like crazy breed of like super cow like things to take over? Like and then they're making them with all their parts that they're harvesting and then they're gonna release them on the world, and that's how they're gonna. The aliens
Shoot,
themselves aren't gonna do anything. It's gonna be the cows that they're creating, the super
the
cows that.
cows are sleeper agents for the aliens. They're
Yeah,
gonna like shoot lasers out of their udders.
yeah. Oh,
I,
But
gross.
they actually have to squeeze them themselves to
yeah.
shoot. They don't shoot automatically, so they're like,
Oh, just walking on two legs, just like
yeah.
uh, I just imagined like because you mentioned them like giving us chocolate milk. So it's like everyone who still drinks milk is also turned and like all of us
Mm.
humans become their slaves. But everyone who drank like oat milk, like the milk alternative people, they become the saviors for some reason.
Oh no, that's a
The
horror.
the
That is
most
a horror
unlikeliest of
movie.
heroes.
That's the scariest thing I've ever heard.
In the show, like they spent a lot of time on the one specific movie, and they gave credit to this movie as being uh probably one of the best animal attack movies. We know what that is. It is Jaws. Jaws, to this day, has had longevity. So Jaws has been overall considered a very impactful movie. I don't know if you guys agree with it being impactful, but what are your thoughts? If you do agree with it, what makes Jaws so impactful? And if you don't agree, why isn't it as impactful?
There's two obvious things. As someone who dabbled in music, I'm gonna go with the music aspect for this, so you guys can have the other one to play with. But like I in school, I played the Jaws music for like marching band and other stuff, and it's such a simple and effective song. You know, you're mostly playing two notes through a lot of it, but just how it's used, the inflection of it, and like till this day, it just hits of that bum 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 bum. You know, it takes its time. It's that pacing. Like the music is paced just as well as the movie itself is paced. and it's
Mhm.
slowly getting you, and you're like, it's coming. It's equal to like Jason and the you know the you know it has
Yeah.
that same feel. There's that simplicity and effectiveness to it. That's just it still rings true to today. A lot of movies take reference to that, and it just shows how well it works.
No, that is 100%. That's actually one of the only things I ever learned of the piano. I was like, I just want to know that. Uh, in there. That was it. And it's a song that constantly comes up, even like when you're playing, when you're thinking of something like in your head, at least in my head, it'll
Yeah,
randomly
no, for
play like
sure.
that. Like right before I'm about to attack that pizza in there, and I'm kind of looking
Mm.
at it in my head, it's going dun, dun,
That dorsal fin
dun,
shaped
dun.
pizza.
Yeah.
No, but that's a good one. What about you, Marie? What do you think made Jaws so impactful over the decades?
Well, okay. So before I say anything, Jose, I was gonna say one thing. When I saw Jaws, I watched Jaws for the first time last year, like
Oh
2024,
wow.
Oh,
very first time. So, and I actually had a little tiny review that not review, but I took notes as I was watching it because that's what I have to do with movies, not knowing what I'm going to do with these notes, but maybe I'll put it in an episode. So, how about Jose, you tell me first, and then I'll give my little review of Jaws or my little notes of Jaws I took when I was watching it like 6 months ago.
okay.
It's okay.
Well, George
Okay.
George covered the music. That was going to be one of my things. Uh, I think one of the main things that just made it so impactful is the ripple effect on society that the movie had. It created a fear of sharks and, exponentially higher than whatever it was at that point. Even during that time, people were afraid to go to the beaches because of this movie. And, you know, decades later, there's still that fear of sharks where there's even people who blame the state of shark these days with the hunting of sharks and the stigma the sharks have, tracing it back all the way to this movie as being one of the catalysts. Beyond just art itself, this had an impact on how society views sharks and that negative mindset. I mean, they've had to make a whole week to try to change the reputation of sharks that movie put. And I think when a movie is able to do that, even if it's not the most positive impact, it's still an impact. And all these decades later, again, it's still there. So that's one of the big reasons for me.
Well, being someone who watched it for the first time recently, I could totally vouch and say yes, that it definitely stood the test of time because it affected me same as any new movie would have. I mean, I think that older movies can be extremely effective, but watching it for the first time, it aged well. Let's put it that way. And I know we're supposed to be talking about like the horror show, but I just because I talked about Jaws so much, because like I just gotta give you my little notes of Jaws. Is that okay?
Do it up.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is when I first watched it. Um, the tension that is built on so little, not physically showing the threat, obviously, it was just like magic. It was filmed in such a genius way, and the shark scenes looked insanely real, like ridiculously real. The shark truly felt like a monster in a physical way, but also in a metaphorical slash deeply emotional way for the main characters. I love the tight story and intimacy between the three main characters in the last half of the movie, really building on their backstories and connection slash relationship. The scene where Quint tells his backstory was my favorite part of the whole movie. The fact that his backstory is based on true events, I thought was genius, and him explaining seeing the shark's dead, black, soulless eyes coming alive and turning white when they bit into the flesh of the people in the water. I thought it was the most horrifying image. Um, I love that so much. I cried when Quint died. Spoiler alert. But his death scene was amazing and it was filmed so brilliantly and beautifully. I wasn't expecting it to be so layered and deep, like confronting your fears and the corruption of the government and like greed and capitalism. Like the movie just has everything. I just wasn't expecting any of that to be in it. I had no idea it was going to be that like deeply layered. It flowed perfectly. Each scene was framed gorgeously. And in my note, I say, is that even a word? Haha. So yeah, Jaws. I think the reason why we talk about animal attack movies is because of Jaws. And the reason why there's been so many more since then is because of Jaws. So
They still borrow elements from to this day. I think I saw this movie
Oh yeah.
last year that came out on Netflix, called I think it was called like Under Paris or something. And it was basically the Jaws, but they multiplied the shark. They switched the location to Paris, but you still had all the elements where there's a shark attack. People are suspicious. Some people are getting paranoid. The government refuses to shut down. At this point, it's like a triathlon event because there's too many
Mhm.
people, too much money has been spent. Refuses it. Of course, that backfires. So still, like those elements, that concept that Jaws has so long ago, is still being borrowed in like all of these movies. Speaking of a movie having an impact and putting fear into people outside once they like stop watching that movie. Was there any movies, animal attack movies you guys have seen in your life that kind of freaked you out and had like an effect on you after you watched it?
Well, I will say Jaws, obviously. And what I really want to watch is Cujo again. I haven't watched Cujo since I was a kid, and I remember thinking it was so boring because I was like really young when I watched it. But now as a mother, I really want to watch it very badly, and I think it's gonna hit me like just totally in a different way. So there isn't like, well, there is one animal movie that did affect me, but I'll save that for the other question. Like I said, a lot of them don't hit me that hard. Like I'm not gonna I don't know. How do I word this? None of them freaked me out where it's like I can't sleep at night or anything like that, you know?
Mhm.
But I say Jaws would be the most scary because I am already afraid of the water. So I'm just like, God, even though I live in like the prairies, there's no ocean around me, so it's not like I'm gonna worry about that going into the water. Just whatever else is down there.
Yeah, that shark won't get there. Yeah.
We have to worry about
Right.
leeches. Leeches are pretty scary anyway.
Those suck.
Oh, next horror
Yeah,
movie releases.
yeah. Hmm.
What about you, George? Was there any movie that like freaked you out in any way?
They kind of downplayed this movie when they talked about it, but honestly, The Swarm. Like they made the
Well,
claim of
yeah,
like,
they
oh, no
did
one's
downplay
afraid
it.
of bees. I was like, fuck you. All right. Now, I'm not
I'm
afraid of
most
bees
afraid.
as an adult.
Oh yeah.
Like, I'm totally
Yeah.
fine with bees. I don't care. But as a kid, when you're like 6, 7 years old, I probably saw The Swarm when I was in first, second grade. And at that time, we had like two, three beehives at our school, like recess yard. There was some at the park 2 blocks away. Like bees were everywhere as a kid. And at that time, there was also like news reports of killer bees coming from like South America, coming north and everything. Now,
Yeah.
granted, as a kid, I have no scale of distance and location. You know what I mean? Like Texas and Massachusetts, it's like I'm safe. I'm okay. You know. But as a kid, you're not thinking that. You like watch news with your parents. You're like, oh, they're coming. I just saw that movie. You know? And in the movie, it's like bees are this freaking small. You can't tell the difference from a killer bee and a regular bee. You know, so I can't be like, oh yeah, I know that's my main neighborhood bee. I have nothing to worry about. I can tell from all the way over there. No, as opposed to like, let's say a freaking rabbit or a horse or a crocodile. I was like, I can see exactly what that is. I know what's going on with a bee. It's a mystery. It's a mystery if this little critter is gonna freaking stick me and I'm gonna die. Let alone the fact that it's not one at a time, it's hundreds and thousands at a time. You know, because you could survive a killer bee. Like one killer bee gets you, you'll survive. It's not a problem. You might feel a little woozy, but if thousands sting you, you're done. Like that's it. All right.
Mhm.
So to me, there's something terrifying about that. Especially when you watch the movie The Swarm, there's just this black cloud over in the sky coming down on them. That's ominous. You know, it kind of replicated the birds to me, you know, just with a much tinier creature that actually has a lethal venom inside of it, as opposed to a bird that's just a beak. Like I could punch a bird. Okay, you know, I could punch a bird, but like I can't punch bees.
You might hit like five of them, but
I'm
you're
not sure if
done.
the impact's going to make a
Yeah,
difference, especially think when you're
I
like
know.
6 or 7 years old, your punch means nothing. Right? I punched my dad, and my dad looks at me like, "What was that? What was it?" You know?
I'm not gonna lie. I got a bit paranoid. Remember when they started talking about murder hornets making their way to the U.S. and I was like, wait, what?
Right?
murder hornets? How big? Where?
And those are
In
bigger
that?
than killer bees.
Yeah. I was like, I went straight to Google and I was like, where are they appearing? Are they appearing anywhere near me at all? Sometimes
Murder
those,
hornets.
yeah, sometimes those bug ones. There was this other bug that I remember hearing that it it was like a tick or something, but it was like when it was stinging people or like uh, biting people, whatever the hell ticks do. People were having side effects where their body would change and they wouldn't be able to consume red meat anymore. Red meat would become like poison for them. And it was all like off of the bite of this tick. I'm like, no, don't take my steak away.
Well, most
That
most ticks
tick.
can give you Lyme disease.
Yeah,
It's almost like a
that's
guaranteed
scary.
thing. When I learned that shit, I was like, I never want to go in tall grass again.
No, ticks scared me too. Like totally. Is there a movie about ticks?
Yeah, yeah, there is.
There is?
Yeah. When I was a kid, I saw a movie called Ticks, and that's when I learned about that.
Ew.
When I was a kid, bugs were scary, man. Bugs were
Bugs are
not to
still
be messed
scary.
with. I did reports in school, like my science reports were all on bugs. I did one on bees, I had stuff on ticks. It's like because like you learn about it. I learned about the Lyme disease. I was like, what you got
That's
killer
it.
freaking bees that aren't making honey and freaking ticks that aren't spiders? What the hell?
You, you know what statistic? It still has me a little paranoid to this day that one
No.
of one of the biggest killers of human beings in the world are mosquitoes.
Yeah,
Freaking
crazy.
mosquitoes.
It's okay. Is there a lot of mosquitoes where you guys live? Is there a lot of them? Because there is like we call the mosquito here our like not national. Like in my province is like our bird. We call it like our province's like bird is a mosquito as a joke because there's so many. Like it's dumb. You guys,
Yeah,
it's so scary here. There's got the geese, you got the ticks, lots of ticks, leeches, you got tons of mosquitoes. Wasps are just insane. Guys, you ever want to see me around a wasp? You ever want to see me freak out? Bees? Whatever. Wasps, there's so many in the fall. One's near me, I will like scream and run away. I'm the worst. Like with that.
but
It's like they're like, don't move, and I'll be like, oh,
wasps are the geese of the bee kingdom. They are just assholes
Yeah, because they can keep on
for no
stinging you.
reason.
A bee stings you once and it dies, but a
Yeah,
wasp or like a hornet stings you, they keep on going.
oh,
I
I've
saw
seen it happen.
I saw a video the other day of a bee. It stung the guy in his hand. The guy let it land on his hand and it stung him. And then the bee had regrets and it started like spinning, trying to basically unscrew its stinger off. And it just started spinning
Uh,
around, trying to slowly pull it off. It failed
yeah.
in there. But, but yeah, no, wasp, they're just like, I feel in the mood for violence and they just go after people.
Oh, they're evil.
Yeah.
Okay, see, maybe I'd be more scared. See, I haven't watched a lot of like insect related horror movies, probably because it would affect me the way it's affected George. And so when you ask me this question, I'm like, I'm not like nothing bothered me that much, but just hearing about like yeah, the swarm, that was really scary. And they're talking about it like it's a crappy movie. And I'm thinking when I was watching the episode two, I also was thinking that sounds like the scariest thing I've ever heard because bees are like freaking everywhere. Wasps too. Like they're everywhere. It's not like if I don't want to see a bear, I just won't go into the woods. If I don't want to see a shark, I won't go swim in the ocean. You know what I mean? But it's like bees are everywhere, and bees are great. We love bees. We need the bees. We get
Oh
it.
yeah.
But if a bee's attacking you, okay,
How many
it's
people do
scary.
you know would not run away if a bee was near them? Littlest to the biggest person, anyone's gonna be like, "Oh, should a bee?" That's the immediate reaction from anybody. Is, "Oh, what the hell?" I don't know anyone who won't do that.
I got I got stung once playing football in the middle of running to get the ball. They said hut. I started running. All of a sudden, I just felt something in my ankle. And I'm like, what? What just happened? Like, whatever. Finished the play. I was like, I got to go to the sideline. I went to the sideline. Somehow it got inside of my cleat and my sock and stung me in my ankle. Damn bees.
Shifty,
Yeah.
shifty, and they're small and they can fit places. Like yeah, I know.
Yeah. But back to the question. For me,
Sorry.
yeah. For me, there was a movie that I remember as a kid. There was this one night where it really freaked me out. It wasn't a long-term freak out, but there was that one night, and it was I had watched Arachnophobia,
Yeah.
and I was
I
in
knew
Puerto
that was gonna
Rico.
be yours.
Yeah, and I was in Puerto Rico, and over there for those who haven't been Puerto Rico and stuff like that, a lot of times in the houses, especially it was very common when I was a kid because of all the mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Uh, they have this thing they call a mosquitero. It's basically a net that goes over your bed. It attaches to the ceiling. You tuck it into the mattress, and it's like a net basically for the mosquitoes getting in there and destroying you while you're sleeping. So I remember going to sleep, waking up groggy, like half asleep in the middle of the night. You know when you start like seeing things when you're like half asleep in the middle of the night. So I woke up, I look up and I can see tarantulas like all on the netting, like surrounding it, like
Oh,
trying to get in. And remember as a kid, like I froze and I was like, what do I do? Like they're coming from until like I finally started to wake up and realize there's nothing on the nets. But I remember fresh off of watching that movie earlier in that day, I had a heart attack there. Like I ended up having like sleep paralysis and seeing tarantulas all over the nettings. I still remember it to this day. So arachnophobia definitely had a freak out session.
I imagine even the netting must have felt like webbing because it's usually thin.
yeah.
At least I've seen some different kinds. Like some of the kinds my family had was that very thin see-through kind,
Very
which
thin.
looked like web.
Yeah. And you can't go anywhere because
Yeah.
they were all over the net. So if like I
Oh
open
God.
it up to run, they're gonna get me. I'm just there frozen, hoping they don't get in.
Terrifying.
Uh,
Yeah. All right, back to the show though. Back to the show. Uh they covered a lot of movies in there. Was there any movie that they brought up or they talked about that caught your eye that you didn't see before and you were like, oh, I kind of want to check that out?
Usually when I watch this show, it's like, yeah, I've seen like almost everything here. You're not going to do anything new. Uh, but the movie Rogue, I had loosely heard of in passing by, but I never actually watched the movie. And I felt they did a really good job of giving us just enough scenes and the way they all talked about it. I was like, this movie sounds really freaking good. Like, I gotta freaking watch this. I immediately put it on my queue, like, after I was done watching the show. I was like, that sounds like a fun freaking movie. Like, it sounded like it grasped the essence of,
Yeah.
like, Jaws, but with a crocodile.
Before we go to Marie, I'm gonna jump in because I had the exact same movie where I wrote it down.
Yeah.
But wait, they sold me on that movie. Again, they didn't overshare to the point where it ruined. Because one of the things that we discussed in season one is there were a couple of episodes where they got too spoilery with some of the movies. That was fine because we had seen it. But if you hadn't seen it, it's like, well, you already know what's gonna happen. It's gonna take away a lot of the suspense. So they showed just enough to pique my interest, sell me on that movie, but leave it open enough that like I want to see what happens and how it plays off and how it ends. So Rogue was the same one that I had. What about you, Marie?
Honestly, Rogue was on mine, but so was
Nice.
the movie, but so was the movie Squirm because it looks hilarious. Like I
Oh, with the
wanted to watch
worms.
like
Yeah,
Squirm with
yeah.
the worms. Like
The word
I'm not
teeth.
afraid of worms. I know that like if everyone was crawling up the guy's cheeks and stuff, I was like, okay, this is like I gotta see this movie. Like I have to see it. Like I'm not afraid of worms. Like I'm the type of person where after it rains and the worms come out, I'll like pick them up and like
Yeah.
I like go fishing. I bait my own hook with like live worms. Like I don't care about touching worms. Like they don't freak me out. That's just looked like a very it looked like a fun movie. So Squirm was on my list and Rogue was first and then Squirm.
Reminded me of like that meme. It's like there's a highly unlikely chance that like a worm in this case will attack, but it's never zero.
No. No, definitely not. Not I only see them up close too. A lot of up close shots of worms where it's like, I don't really need to know that they look like that up close. Yeah.
But as many movies as they covered, I felt like a lot of it they stuck with older movies, some of the OGs, some
Yeah.
of the original ones that kind of pioneered some of the newer stuff. So they didn't cover too much new things in it. So are there any newer movies that they didn't cover and you felt like would have fit into this episode because they're pretty good?
Yes. A 2014 movie called Backcountry, which is a bear
Oh, haven't heard of that
movie.
one.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, well, it was filmed, part of it was filmed in my province in a Caddy Lake where I used to have like a camping trailer with my family, where my brother came face to face almost with a bear while he was going to the bathroom outside one night and woke up the whole campground because he screamed that he saw a bear. But anyway, so it's kind of got a personal connection. But it's about a couple who go camping, and that's all you really need to know. But it has one of the most vicious, realistic scenes, drawn out scenes I've ever seen. And it was one of the most terrifying animal attack scenes I've ever seen. It was in the movie Backcountry.
Writing that
And it's
down.
pretty tense too. Like there's a lot of tension to it. And yeah, but keep in mind, it's Canadian, you guys. When you watch it, Canadian movies have a little bit of a feel. So just, keep that in mind, okay? But yeah, definitely back country.
My follow-up to, because they touched on this subject during the show, for this, was a real bear utilized or was this a
Oh
CGI
yeah.
bear?
I think it was a real bear. Just sorry, but if you want to cut this out, I think it was real. Back country.
I mean, even if it was like a prosthetic of sort, like
Yeah.
as long as there was something tangible, that could still be cool.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it came out in 2014. It was a few years since I've seen it. Yes, the 2014 survival thriller Backcountry used real black bears in its filming.
Yeah, because I
Yep.
felt like that was an interesting thing that they brought up there in the episode. I forget his name, the famous bear that got used in like multiple movies and everything. And I did agree with them. I don't know if you guys agree with them that it's like the effect is better when it is real animals,
Yeah.
but is it worth it? And like I feel like I'd rather sacrifice the the bigger effect of having the real animal than like what they were putting those animals through.
But at the same time, wouldn't you like to see a real bear on the cocaina? I mean, come on, man. It ends up being the
Bear
coolest
maybe
bear ever.
Bear maybe would have enjoyed it. So who
Yeah.
knows? This is
Oh.
abuse if they like it. No,
Uh,
it's so bad.
Oh. Well, what about you, George? Is there a modern one, a newer one that they didn't talk about that you felt would have been referenced and fit right in?
I don't know if this counts. So I'll be fully honest. Part of me feels like this doesn't count, but the question you had given us was like if it was something good, and I felt like there aren't really any good animal attack movies. There's cheesy ones that are just a fun time, but like I was thinking like
Mm.
Jaws level, like oh this is like award-winning good, and so my mind went straight to The Revenant, honestly. And I know it's not
Oh,
really an animal attack movie. There's a lot more going on there. But there's that scene that we all think about with that movie. Like he full on
Yeah.
faces a bear. And I remember seeing that in the theaters. And it's one of those rare times where I was like in the front row. And so like my neck is just like this. Uh, but like it felt like the bear was just that much more massive when you're that close to the screen. And I'm just like, yo, motherfucker's gonna die. I was like, this is the end of Leonardo DiCaprio, and it felt so like visceral and just like intense. I was like, I'm seeing this poor man get eviscerated by a bear, you know. And like, so like that just it still stands out to me. I guess there's definitely much deeper and heavier things that movie's actually about. It's not about a bear, but that is the scene that everyone screams about with that movie. So I feel like
mm.
that could have been worthwhile to mention. Maybe a second thought, maybe the Meg. That's just like a real thing that could belong there, but that's not a good movie. It's just a movie.
Yeah. The Revenant is kind of bending the rules, but that scene is such a good scene with animal attack that we'll let it slide because it
Hmm.
It's
is
good. It's really good. And that's
it
a
is a
CG
crazy
bear.
portrayal. Yeah. For me, I actually have one that I thought was good. That came out, I believe it was last year, and it's a French movie, and it's called Infested. This revolves around spiders, and it's spiders that are replicating, and they're attacking an apartment complex. So this apartment complex is now like infested with spiders that are growing at a good pace and all that stuff. And I felt this movie did a really good job of, first of all, uh making you like the characters in there, so you actually cared if something happened to them. There was a lot of good tensions. When you have a scene and there's only one way to go, and it's surrounded by spiders, and they have to go through there, like, and they play that scene out in a way where like you feel the anxiety that they're feeling. Like I felt like it did a good job with that, but then it wasn't only just the spiders, you also have the human element, that can become a threat in these type of situations. So I felt that was a good movie, which is funny because it came out the same month as a very bad spider movie
Oh,
that
really?
was called Sting. In that one, they had like some kind of alien like spider that like came in and grew that was all CGI. But that's one that didn't talk about that it's newer. Who knows? They might have filmed this episode before that movie came out because the movie came out last year. But I do recommend watching that one if you want to see a good creepy like spider movie. But anything else you guys want to cover regarding this episode, or any final thoughts on this episode?
I am
Um,
surprised they didn't talk about the Meg.
it's
Like I kind of should have been in there, right? They
yeah.
they talked about
Yeah,
like almost every shark movie. Like I'm surprised there wasn't like a list of like top 5 shark movies or something like that. Like that's the one that gets the most, I would say, out of all of these monster attack movies is shark movies. Like no mention of Sharknado. Like how did that got mentioned? It's like they're using regular sharks, CG sharks, but they're regular sharks. It's not like we're having like a toxic Avenger shark of sorts, or a giant shark. Like there's just certain ones I thought like this has to get mentioned, and at least in the cheesiest of ways. There could be cheesy films to talk about, and they didn't lean towards it. So that was a surprise to me.
yeah. The
They didn't
Meg
talk.
aspect surprised me for sure.
They didn't
Sorry,
talk
go
about
ahead.
Anaconda either. They didn't talk about
Yeah,
Anaconda.
Yeah, that one I was really surprised they didn't talk about
Yeah.
Anaconda, because I remember watching that as a kid and I was like, I do not want to go there.
they had a franchise.
Yeah.
Like there was
Yeah,
2, 3 films for Anaconda, and they're making a new one for some reason.
For some reason.
yeah, which was funny because I think Anaconda came before Lake Placid,
I
and I
think so
remember
too.
yeah, and Anaconda was a hit, and then Lake
Hmm.
Placid came
Yeah.
out, and they spent time on Lake Placid. So
Yeah. I don't know why they're boycotting these
It's
movies. We got to
because of
find out. There's got to be some
J
reason.
Lopez, who's tied to the P. Diddy's. It all makes sense when you start to think
Ah,
about it.
oh, who's in Meg that
it's
they're
Yeah.
because
trying to be like, we can't talk about them. Shush, shush.
Because you got the Jason
Meg.
Statham, who's tied to the Meg.
Look at the Meg. You know the Meg likes to party.
Real down under.
Uh, I was gonna say, like, I'm still, I feel like wishy-washy about when you asked me about like what movie scared me or like whatever. But there's a reason why I think I don't really watch a lot of these, and I'm kind of contradicting myself when I say this, but I don't watch a lot of monster or sorry or animal attack movies because it's too real horror for me. You know what I mean? When I watch a horror movie, I want it to be like an escape in a way, like an adrenaline rush, because like I don't go on I don't like roller coasters and all that stuff. Horror movies to me are like a roller coaster, and I don't want my roller coaster, my amusement park ride. And if I watch something too real, then it's like, man, this is just real life. And to me it's like animal attack movies, that's real true horror, and it's just showing you how extremely terrifying nature can be, turning on you like real animals, and showing how vulnerable and insignificant and irrelevant human beings are. Like even bees, like they can get you, you're done. So I'm like, you know what? I'm good. I don't want to be too afraid of walking out my front door. It already kind of scares me. All the animals, I can look at you except for geese and just try to like you a little bit and think that you're magical. I don't want to see how awful you can all be. So maybe that's why I don't watch them, because they'll scare me too much because it's too real. You know what I'm saying?
I
I
get
can
it.
hear that. I tend to avoid like political movies for that same reason, because I'm like,
Hmm.
it's too
Yeah.
real. There's enough out there. I can just turn on the news and I get the same thing.
For me, it's war, anything war movies. Like, oh God. Like I'm like I can't. Like, they hit me too hard. I'm too emotional, and I get too sad. Even though I bet they're brilliant, I have never seen like Saving Private Ryan, Band of Brothers, any of that stuff because it's too. I can't. It's too real. I mean, I should, I will, whatever. But it's like that's the same kind of thing for me. That's nature. It's human nature. It's like actual nature, animals. It's like I need an escape from this, man.
So Dan, if you watch this episode, make her watch Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
Just the
good
first
one.
15, 20 minutes. That's it.
At
Just get
least,
the story
yeah.
part. Yeah. So this was episode one, Animal Attacks. We have episode two that's gonna be coming out. It's titled Killer Dates. So this is gonna revolve around dates in horror movies. I'm curious how that's gonna play out because usually you don't have movies revolving. How many movies you have revolving around a date? You can have dates that go wrong within these movies. So I am curious how the content's gonna be, but before we get into it, what do you guys think just hearing that? It's titled Killer Dates.
Does it mean a date like you're going out on a date and your date is gonna off you, or is it a date as in like Friday the 13th, or like is it a date on a calendar? Like what is it? I didn't read the synopsis.
Well, it's a one sentence description that says dates in horror are worst case scenarios that go way past awkward silences. So I'm
Okay,
assuming romantic
okay,
dates.
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, all right. I mean, we all have a horror story about one of those, so I mean,
Yeah, I feel like
I'm excited to see.
there's enough horror films with significant others that end up being, psychopaths.
Yeah,
Yep.
off the top, at the top of my head, and let's do that. You have a movie on top of your head that you think would fit this category. For me, I would say, it's came out. I want to say like 2 years ago, or it was in 2022. But it was a movie called Fresh.
Oh yeah,
Seen
yeah,
it?
yeah. That was
Fresh.
good. That was
I
good.
feel that can fit in the killer date category, and that was like really good. More like psychological horror, things like that. What about you guys? Any movie that pops in your head that you feel can fit that?
I mean, I feel like the obvious one is like Scream,
Yeah,
like that's like an easy
yeah.
go-to. But I think in a loose way, because I know you probably didn't like this movie, was like Barbarian. Because while there's not a date aspect, you get this sense
Mhm.
in the very beginning where like the girl and the guy end up at the Airbnb and that they each double booked over each other, and it's like, oh, I'm mad that you got this. It's supposed to be my place, but then they start getting along. I where that movie started off, I thought it was going to end up like that. It gave me the feel of like a killer date movie of like, oh, they're gonna end up together, but then they're gonna find out the other person's a killer, something like that.
I can see that.
Mm.
So it played with the trope in a way.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that. It probably would have been better. A better second
I
half.
100% agree. Yeah. I'm trying to think about like I know I've seen like a ton of them. Like I know I've seen where it's like, oh, don't trust him or don't trust her or like which one's the bad one. You know what I mean? Like which and they're making you think that this person's the bad one, but it's really going to be them. I can't think of any names right now. It's really bothering me.
Not
Like
even like a
dates.
Stephen King movie.
Are you giving me a hint right now? Like
Kind
are you
of,
giving me a hint?
kind of.
Well, like why am I so bad at thinking about names on the spot? Like
Why am I
I
so bad?
seriously like I seriously am trying to think of names and stuff. I thought, what do you, which Stephen King one?
I'm thinking with Carrie. Carrie goes on
Well,
a date to the prom, and she
yeah,
becomes the one who just terrorized
Christine
everyone.
count? She's like dating the car.
I know. That's what I
Totally,
was thinking too.
totally.
Like, yeah, okay, okay. I think I'm thinking too. Like an actual couple. I think I was thinking about too much, not just like a date. But I know, I know I've seen so many of them, and it's just like I'm really hard. I can't think of things on the spot when there's
I
a
mean, with
camera
this
on
it's
me.
such a loose topic. They can kind of go anywhere with it too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I'm curious to see. It's funny we can't think of one right now. All right, I put you on the spot. That wasn't a planned
I
question.
know.
Damn it, Jose.
You're on your toes. That's
That's why I've
question
never been
attack.
on a date because I'm
Yeah.
not good under pressure. I'm not like if I go on a date and they're like, "So tell me about yourself," I'm like, "I'm out. I'm out of here." Like I feel like I'm being murdered right now. Like I can't be
Nope.
asking questions on the
Taxi.
spot. Like that's it. Yeah, I'm out.
That's the horror element of it, is the awkward silence. That's it.
Yeah,
Nothing, no
yeah.
one gets
Yeah.
hurt. There's
Getting
just
to know
awkward
each other.
silence.
Huh.
Ugh,
But
stretcher.
we are going to watch that episode, and after we watch it, we're going to be recording another bonus episode of Nas where we're going to be covering episode 2, and then we'll find out. First of all, are our movies that we just thought of included in there? Are we even sniffing in the right direction of where they're planning to go? And we will be right back in here with all the details of episode 2 of Horror's Greatest, which you can find season 1 and episode 1 right now on Shudder. I have been your host for this episode, Jose,
I have been your other guy, George.
And I'm your token Canadian, Marie.
who loves geese.
Ah,
Uh,
ah, ah, ah. Trauma.
with that being said, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Nas. You can find us on all social media platforms. You can find our show and wherever you can find podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, all the good ones. So make sure you tune in, like and subscribe below. If there's any movies we didn't bring up and the show didn't bring up, make sure you mention them down below and give us your best guesses that you think for the second episode of Killer Dates.